Hello everyone, welcome to our final chat of Health and Wellness 101 Everyday Small Changes. We had a lot of good questions this week. I even learned a little bit of information myself about some things I'd heard about but had never really looked into. So we're going to jump right in. The first question says, what foods can be used for vegetarians instead of meats? Your goal, if you are going entirely vegan, which means no animal products at all, is to get all the essential amino acids that your body needs as the building blocks for tissue. And there actually is one non-meat alternative that provides you all the essential amino acids, and that's soy. So using soy crumbles in place of hamburger meat or turkey, as an example, or chicken. You can buy soy burgers. You can use tofu in different products. So there's actually a lot of varieties of ways to use soy. So I encourage you to check into that. However, you can eat foods that, when in combination with other foods at some point throughout the day, will still provide you with all the essential amino acids. As an example, what rice is missing, beans have. And what beans are missing, rice has. So just at some point during the day, having rice in your meal and beans in your meals is going to provide you all the essential amino acids. So some other foods that are going to give you the amino acids are whole grains. Nuts are a good source, and nuts are going to give you the protein and along with it. If you will use dairy products, then you're going to get all the essential amino acids because dairy's products are an animal food. And eggs are another good source if you work eggs into your vegetarian diet. So I've listed, I think it was in one of the earlier chats, I listed links to a website from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. There was a lot of resources and handouts for vegetarian diets. And for this week's lecture, I'm going to list that link again so you can go back and just kind of review that information. Related to that, someone else said, how do I get the family to eat vegetarian meals? They're wanting to incorporate more and they've got a little bit of resistance from the family. It will vary a little bit depending on what ages you're working with in terms of your family. But I encourage you to get them involved in looking for recipes. There are so many recipes that you can Google that you can find on Pinterest. So sit down together sometime, search for recipes, let them pick out some recipes, get them involved in the food preparation, have them cook with you. And if you make it more of an experience that you do together, they might be more willing. People usually will more quickly try a food they helped prepare than one that was just set in front of them. Next, how can I get fish to taste good? The number one rule for the best tasting fish is to get it as fresh as possible. If fresh fish isn't available, the next best choice is fish that has been flash frozen. Another important rule to make your fish taste good is to not overcook it. As a general rule, you would measure your fish at the thickest point of the cut, and for every inch, it requires 8 minutes of cooking time. Someone on the MOOC who's a participant suggested soaking your fish in milk overnight, and that's actually a recommendation that is legitimate. And it doesn't even have to be overnight. You can soak your fish for 20 to 30 minutes. And what happens is the casein, which is the milk protein, in the milk bonds with a compound that is contributing to the fish smell and the fishy taste. And so by binding with it, it's helped removing that taste. And then I encourage you to just, again, Google for recipes and check Pinterest. When I just looked to see what was out there, there were almost too many recipes to pick from. But a lot of them used lemon juice and lime juice. Those were very popular and to help mask the fishy flavor. Some other things I saw, balsamic oil was popular for fish, fresh dill, garlic, and just a variety of spices. The next question says, what is the benefit of the avocado seed? And actually, most seeds from fruits are loaded with nutrients. We just tend not to use them. But the avocado seeds in particular may have an anti-inflammatory effect, so they could reduce inflammation in our body. And because of that, they can help possibly with cardiovascular health. Also hypertension, osteoarthritis would be another one. The seeds are also very high in soluble fiber, and that's another reason they might be beneficial for heart health. Now, in rats and mice, there are no human studies to support this, but it might be something further down the road we know more about. But in mice and rats, they had anti-tumor properties. So there might be something in the future related to cancer prevention. And then there are some cultures that use the pulp of the avocado seed to treat diarrhea and dysentery. If I prepare meals on Saturday and put them in the freezer, are the nutrients retained until I'm ready to eat them? And somebody else, what are the pros and cons of freezer meals? And fresh fruits, vegetables, meals usually always taste the best when they're the freshest, but that's not always convenient. So many times we need to have things in the freezer, and we actually encouraged you to freezer prep meals and then put cooked meals into the freezer so that you've got them handy. So there might be some slight difference in taste, but in terms of nutrition, there shouldn't be. Frozen foods are still going to have a high retention of vitamins and minerals. It's economical to freeze your own meats, casseroles. What you want to do is make sure that you wrap them in airtight plastic. You want to push out as much air as you can, because the air being present is part of what will cause them to deteriorate over time. Or use freezer containers or freezer bags, and that helps maintain the flavor and the quality. And make sure the food is fitting the container. You don't want food that only takes up about 1/3 of the actual container, because you're leaving a lot of airspace in that, and you want to limit the airspace. The main tip that I would give you is, after sealing it, make sure you write on your bag what it is and date it. There have been so many things I've had to throw out of my own freezer because at the time I thought, oh, I'll remember what this is and I'll remember when I fixed it. And then I would go back and look at it and I'd have no clue what it was or how long it had been in there. So make sure you're writing the item and also when you prepared it on the bag. If you can use them within 3 to 4 months, you're going to have the best flavor and the best nutrient quality. And my last tip is to store the oldest items at the front of your freezer or the top of your freezer if it's a chest freezer. You want to use the oldest items first. So whenever you put in new items, put them towards the back or on the bottom so that the older items are used. Someone else asked, related to frozen foods, they heard it wasn't as nutritious as fresh. Do they lose nutrition as they stay in the freezer? The nutritional content of fruits and vegetables in particular will vary on various factors. It depends on the season that they were harvested, how ripe they were, how long did they travel before they got to the grocery store. For example, when vegetables are shipped across several states, they're exposed to extreme light, heat, humidity, and that can cause loss of nutrients. Thiamine, vitamin A and C are examples of nutrients that may be lost. And if they're picked before they become ripe so that they can last longer during transport, we may not have reached the highest level of nutrients that we could have. So technically, it can actually take 10 to 14 days for fruits and vegetables to travel from the farm to your table, whereas frozen produce is sent directly from the fields or the orchards where they're grown to a processor who is near that field, and they may only sit for a few hours before they're frozen. And the methods that they freeze them with are meant to retain high nutrient quality. So you might actually have frozen fruits and vegetables that are higher in quality than if you bought fresh fruits and vegetables, depending on all those factors. And there's a little bit of nutrient loss when they go through the freezing process, but it's very minimal. If you freeze fruits and vegetables that have already been in your refrigerator for a while, you've already lost some nutrients at that point. So if you intentionally bought more than you could use in a short amount of time because there was a good sale going on, I encourage you to go ahead and freeze them at that point. The next question says, how do I reduce cravings for foods that are high in salt, sugar, fat, and replace them with healthier alternatives? My first tip is don't keep them around. If you're keeping chocolates, other types of candies, cookies, cakes, ice cream in the house, then it's very tempting. The National Weight Control Registry, which keeps track of habits of people who have lost at least 30 pounds and kept them off for a minimum of 1 year or more, found out that the people who lose weight and maintain their weight loss the best don't have a lot of variety in their house, because that way they're not tempted. Another way to help avoid cravings is to eat meals and snacks on a regular basis, because if you get hungry from skipping a meal or delaying a meal, you're more likely to be tempted by the things that are higher in fat and higher in sugar. Make sure you're eating a balanced diet, getting vegetables and fruits, whole grains, your lean protein, so that you're not craving something just because of a nutritional deficiency. Look at your stress level also. Stress releases hormones that may cause us to crave foods. So maybe reducing your stress level will help you control your cravings. Another rule or another fact that people aren't usually aware of is the typical craving only lasts for 10 minutes. So when you get a craving for something, if you can do something to occupy your mind for about 10 minutes, usually the craving goes away. Identify the triggers. Note when the cravings are occurring, what are your thoughts, emotions, activities, and then record all this and look for at it for a few days and see if you can figure out, is there anything in particular that's triggering your craving, and then you can work on changing it. If emotions are triggering your craving, then keep healthy alternatives on hand. Take a walk, listen to some music. Sometimes just seeing something will trigger a craving. And so maybe you need to cover it up. We had some leftover birthday cake sitting out on the house that was covered up with a saran wrap, and just seeing it made me want it. So I put a lid on it instead where I couldn't see what it was. Now last night I looked at the pan. I knew what was in the pan, and I thought, boy, a piece of cake would be good. But I also had some fresh broccoli in my fridge, and I love fresh broccoli. So at 9 o'clock at night, instead of eating the cake, I steamed some fresh broccoli, and I really enjoyed that. So in addition to limiting what you have in your house that'll tempt you, keep some things on hand that are very healthy, low in calories, fat, and sugar that you really enjoy. Someone who is a single person said, do you have any tips on meal planning that has variety and helps avoid monotony? And one of our participants in the MOOC is actually an employee of K-State Research and Extension, and she posted a link right below this question that has 12 resources developed by extension agencies throughout different states in the United States. So I'm actually going to refer you to that. I'm putting the link back in with today's lecture, and you'll get a lot of good ideas from these resources that have been developed for cooking for one or two. Someone asked what kind of food replaces cheese. I would really need to know your purpose to replace your cheese, to know how to answer this. If it's because you have an intolerance to cheese and you want to replace the nutrients, cheese is a good source of protein, so meats, fish, beans. But if you're looking at calcium and vitamin D because you can't eat cheese, possibly you can have dairy products, I'm not sure. But soy milk is usually calcium fortified and vitamin D fortified. Other nut milks like almond milks are the same way. Fortified cereals usually have vitamin D in them and possibly some calcium also. There is a cheese made out of soy. The texture and the flavor will really vary. So some people like them. Others think they're a little too rubbery tasting. Someone has a spouse that has diverticular disease. Besides a high fiber diet, what else do we need to do to keep him healthy? Fiber is the key component when you're dealing with diverticulosis. At the times that you are not in an inflamed state, then you eat a high fiber diet to keep the lumen of the gut open so that things don't get trapped in pockets of your GI tract. So high fiber really is the best thing you can do. For women, a high fiber diet is typically 25 to 30 grams a day, and for men, it's 30 to 35 grams a day. The other key component with a high fiber diet is to drink plenty of fluids, because you're going to need the undigestible material to push on through your GI tract, and fluids and exercise will do that. Because you can eat a high fiber diet, but if you don't have enough fluids, you're going to be constipated and you're going to be uncomfortable. Someone had heard that soy protein is not a healthy substitute for meat and that they should use ground turkey instead. And there's actually no scientific evidence to support that, even though that's kind of one of the messages that has gone around on the internet. Because soy protein, it contains soy protein, isoflavones, and fiber, all of which have health benefits, particularly in terms of heart health benefits. And as I mentioned earlier, soy contains all the essential amino acids that your body needs. And soy proteins have been investigated in terms of the benefit for heart health risks, reducing menopausal symptoms, weight loss, arthritis, brain function, and exercise performance. But in any strong scientific results are still not really established. But I can tell you that it's not unhealthy to eat soy, as one of the messages going around the internet would say. What's the best way to use a lot of onions? Should I chop and freeze them? And yes, if you've got a lot of onions, they will go bad on you. And actually, you're not supposed to store onions in the refrigerator, which is what a lot of people will do, but they're more likely to pick up moisture in your refrigerator and spoil faster. But if you take fully mature onions and chop them into about 1-inch pieces, you can put them in a baggie, push out all the air, keep them as flat as possible when you're freezing them, and that way it's easier to break off chunks. It's best if you use freezer bags designed for that purpose and get as much of the air out as you can. They work well in cooked products like soups and stews and casseroles. And you don't even have to thaw them out. You can usually just put them right in the dish that you're making. And frozen onions easily last up to 6 months. There was also a question, is it okay to freeze and thaw in disposable aluminum pans? And yes, they are very convenient for doing your freezer prepared meals. They don't work well for reuse. So if you buy them in the store and you use them, I do that when I'm wanting to send food to a friend that maybe is recuperating or had a loss of a family member or a new birth. I cook them meals and I use the aluminum pans, but they're pretty much going to need to be discarded after the first use. They're just not strong enough for that, but they go directly from the freezer to the oven, so a lot of times you don't even need to thaw them out. Now the pans will discolor some when you've had high acid foods or high salty foods, and that leads people to believe that they're unsafe. They are still perfectly safe. It's just a discoloration. The next question says, what are some suggestions for using flavored vinegars? Flavored vinegars are a great way to soften up meat fibers, so tenderize your meats, without using salt. So use them for meat marinades. And I found a couple of examples that said an apple infused vinegar works great with pork. A strawberry infused vinegar goes well with chicken. So play around with some different varieties. I love using balsamic vinegar as my salad dressing, and I also put it in pasta salads. And any recipe that calls for lemon, lime juice, vinegar, or wine, you can use the flavored vinegars instead. And there are a lot of good recipes if you'll just do a Google search for how to use flavored vinegars. This question says, what are the best containers to use in microwaves, and that they heard that long-term use of plastic isn't healthy? This is actually something else that's going around on the internet right now that is very misleading. The message is that the chemicals that leach out of the plastic and into the food will cause cancer, reproductive problems, and other illnesses. And basically, no. The FDA long ago recognized that there's going to be a small amount of the plastic particles that will migrate into the food. So the FDA closely regulates what they label as microwave approved container. They have done testing. They require the manufacturers that put their containers as being microwave safe. They require that the manufacturers test the containers using tests that meet FDA standards and specs. And those tests have to be reviewed before they can put that on the microwave safe container. Only containers that pass this test get to put the microwave safe icon on there, or it will say the words microwave safe. If they do not have a microwave safe label, the FDA is not saying that they're unsafe. They're just saying they haven't performed tests on them to determine if they are or not. So, but if you're concerned about the use of plastics, you can transfer food to glass or ceramic containers that say that they're fine to use in there. It is recommended to not let plastic wrap touch your food during microwaving because the plastic wrap could melt. What is preferred is wax paper, parchment paper, paper towels, or a domed lid that can fit over bowls. And I use paper towels a lot to cover foods in my microwave. I did find a site that talked about it, and they said that, you know, if you're using your margarine, empty margarine containers to store food and microwave them in, whipped topping containers, yogurt containers, they have not been studied to be microwave safe. So again, we can't say there's any harm in it. We're just saying we've not done tests to say whether they are or not. Microwavable safe trays, if they're the dinner trays, are designed for a one-time use only. And even if you have microwave safe containers, if they're old, scratched, and cracked, you might get a little bit more of the plastic particles leaching out of them. The next question says, they heard that ground turkey is not as healthy as getting lean ground beef. And one of our participants responded to this and actually responded in the same way that I am, in that yeah, that may be true. Ground turkey, if it's primarily made up of the dark meat and includes the skin ground up with it, then it is going to be quite a bit higher in fat and saturated fat than your lean beef. And for example, 4 ounces of a 90-10 ground beef, meaning that by weight, 10% is fat, 90% lean meat, has 197 calories. When I compared it to a ground turkey that did not have the skin in it, but was still the dark meat and the white meat ground together, it was 230 calories, and they had about the same amount of total fat in them. So if you're looking to have the lowest fat ground turkey you can, I encourage you to buy turkey breast on sale when you find them, and you can grind them up yourself and then just store them in the freezer that way. But read the labels, find out what's going into the turkey as it's being ground. How about a meal planning site for someone with diabetes? And I have listed 2 resources for you where this lecture will be posted. One of them is through the American Diabetes Organization, and they have meal planning tips and some recipes for you. And my class here on campus that I teach maintains a diabetes resource wiki, and this is an information portal for a lot of things related to diabetes care. And one of the pages has to do with meal planning, so I'm going to provide you that link also. Someone has children who are in college, and they said in the wintertime they complain that they're bored. So they do a lot of reading, music, and watching TV. And this person wanted to know what are some things they can do indoors, because the weather's not conducive to being outdoors, that helps them stay fit. And there's actually a lot of things that any of us can do when the weather's just not conducive to being outdoors. I've talked about walking in place while you watch TV. You can put on a music video channel. Most cable companies still offer those, and you can dance. You can play your own music and dance. The Nintendo Wii games have Dance Dance Revolution as one example. There are others out there. That's the one I happen to have. You can do push-ups, lunges, squats, all while you're watching TV. There are also free exercise shows on the cable networks, so find out when they are, tune in, and do exercises along with them. On YouTube, one of my favorite places is called Fitness Blenders, and they have a lot of videos that are just 20 to 30-minute short videos for exercise, and they focus on different parts of the body, and I really enjoy those. And you can walk in place just while listening to an audiobook also. It doesn't have to be the TV. I'm into a really good story right now on my audiobook, and it was too windy for me to go walking last night, so I put my headset on and brought up the book on my phone, and for about 20 minutes just walked in place so that I could listen to more of the book. What are some websites for crock pot cooking for someone with diabetes? And I have listed a link for you that will be with this chat, and it's 16 recipes from the American Diabetes Association for crock pots. And when I did a Google search, I found a lot of other sites that look legitimate. So I think just by getting out there and searching, you're going to find a lot. And a few of you were interested in how to eat healthy when visiting someone's home over the holidays. So I have 3 links I'm going to provide you. One of them is from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. One of them is from the American Heart Association. I guess there's just 2 links that I'm putting up for you. And they're going to give you some great tips on what you can do when you're eating out over the holidays and visiting and staying with relatives. But I want to mention a few things you can do. Know your serving sizes. Last week I posted some links to portion information. Know what your serving sizes are. When it's items like desserts and high-fat foods, take sample bites. Don't take full servings. Just take like a spoonful of each in order to try them out. You can offer to prepare some of the foods while you're there or bring them with you. Don't skip meals because if you're hungry, you're going to eat more. Use smaller plates. Stay active wherever you are in order to offset maybe some extra calories or just to take your mind off food. And don't forget about waiting 20 minutes that we talked about in one of the earlier lessons, because a lot of times you're craving for more food. We'll pass at that point. Okay, 2 more questions because we're almost out of time. How do I overcome stress due to money and financial problems? And financial problems can make you feel anxious, affect your self-esteem. It may impact on your eating. And one of the first things I would say was maybe you need to get some assistance with financial planning. So don't be afraid to seek out professional help, or even just talk about it among your friends, and they might can have some programs they can recommend that they've tried that are very economical or even free. A lot of times we get embarrassed if we're in financial trouble and we don't talk about it, but yet our friends and acquaintances may have some great suggestions. So stay active also. Don't withdraw from life. Keep seeing your friends. Don't ignore the bills. Try to pay as many as you can, because you need to face up to what's going on and not try to just ignore it. But a financial planner or even your friends can help you prioritize your debts. Try to keep a normal routine in terms of eating and sleeping so that your immune system doesn't get down. And then, as I mentioned, work up a budget. And finally, take up a hobby. There's actually a lot of research that shows repetitive work, like needlework as an example, or scrapbooking, stamp collecting. Any of those things are calming and tend to lower our heart rate, and that can lower blood pressure. And finally, is there any nutritional difference between table salt, sea salt, and Himalayan pink salt? And according to the people selling sea salts and Himalayan pink salt, yes, there are nutritional differences, but actually there's not. Sea salt is produced through the evaporation of ocean water or water from saltwater lakes. It has very little processing involved, so this leaves behind trace minerals and other elements. And these will add some flavor and color, and that's why you get the Himalayan pink salt. And whereas table salt is mined from underground salt deposits, we have a really large one here in Kansas that's a lot of fun to tour. Table salt is more heavily processed to eliminate the minerals. It has an additive to prevent clumping, but it also has iodine added to it, which is an essential nutrient to help maintain a healthy thyroid. Sea salt and table salt have the basic same nutritional value, even though sea salt's promoted as being healthier. The amount of minerals that sea salt has in it is so small, it doesn't make any difference in our health. So basically, they're pretty much the same. You may get a little bit of taste difference, which you find pleasing, or you may just enjoy the color. But in terms of providing additional nutrient benefits, they don't. And there was a question about what I think about taking vitamins. I'm going to refer you to last week's chat because I spent quite a bit of time talking about it then. Okay, that ends our chat for the final week of the MOOC. And again, I've enjoyed having you in the class. I've had fun reading your post, responding to some of you. I appreciate the way you've been very supportive of other members in the MOOC. That's an important part to helping people make behavior change. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to try to improve little by little. And the small changes eventually lead up to some big results. So good luck in your quest to become healthier and keep working on the small changes. Thank you.